I really encourage you to share your memories and stories about John. Keep it to about 3 or 4 minutes. The bathroom, through the kitchen to the right. Okay. The food you found. Hats, if you want them or need them. Got a bucket of hats right over here. Okay. In the casita, I've created a museum of John, which includes lots of photos, his rubber mask collection, his postcard collection, and various and sundry ephemera. I'm hoping to find loving homes for his shirts, his masks, and his postcards. So if you see some you like, please take them, or just put a post-it on them with your initials, okay? And after we're done celebrating John's life and spirit, I'd like you to help me get John back in the garden he loved so much. I will invite you to take a bag of John's ashes and sprinkle them anywhere in the garden. And while you're doing that, I'm going to play a special Mardi Gras song by the Wild Chapatulas called Brother John is Gone. So I have an ode to John. It's really a love letter to John. My dear John, I have had and always will have a huge love for you. You've been the love of my life, my partner in crime, my soulmate, in a word, the one. So honored and proud to have shared my life with you. Full night we met, dancing to James Brown on a hot July night, to our love-drenched honeymoon on Martha's Vineyard. From the cross-country trip west to all the trips we took over the years, Zihuatanejo, Norway, Paris, Kauai, Bora Bora. As you like to say, the adventure continues. To your kindness, your intelligence, and your comfort in your own skin. To your ability to comfortably connect with little kids, total strangers, and animals. To your political rants. To your sense of righteousness and justice. To your generosity in giving to charitable causes. To the fact that you are always more of a feminist than I was. To your impressive collection of old birdhouses, unnerving rubber masks, antique plumb bobs, trashy postcards, and of course your Hawaiian shirts. To the exquisite craftsmanship you and Eric applied to our renovation, from the cherry kitchen cabinets, to the two-person tub, to the wraparound deck, to uncovering the stained glass windows. To your gardening mastery, to the fact that you spent weeks amending the soil, and that you love the words tilth and fecund. To your backyard cornfield and the gigantic dahlias and fragrant sweet peas. To your curiosity about almost everything and your amazingly large and eclectic library of books, where you might find Of Human Bondage next to Hidden Injuries of Class, next to a Texas joke book called Don't Squat with Your Spurs On. To your sparkling wit and delightful sense of the absurd. To our intergalactic lovemaking. To your love of pie and your love of getting high. To your love of corn. To your Iowa farm boy roots. We were so fortunate to have found each other and so grateful to have shared 36 years together. And I have to say that I'm grateful that you didn't live to see the horror and cruelty and evil of this administration. Grieving does not happen in orderly, sequential stages. For me, it's been more like an emotional roller coaster, or riding a bucking bronco. There are definitely moments of denial, anger, bargaining, and acceptance. But I think Kubler-Ross missed one. I think the fifth element is gratitude. Gratitude for having this person in your life. for the love you shared. In grieving, anguish is magnified, but so is gratitude. What does that mean? Maybe it's all about seeing the fragility and poignancy of life and death and everything in between. Maybe it's meant to open your heart. And finally, I want to share a gift, or as they say in Hawaii, makana. Last month, I took my first real vacation in a very long time. We were out on the Kona coast, and one of my friends put together a little Buddhist ceremony in honor of John. Dave, hey! As we approached the chosen site, we were awed by a fat double rainbow stretched over the ocean, and then a pod of joyous spinner dolphins who take turns jumping up out of the ocean and spinning in the air. I know it sounds like a Disney movie, but to me it was clear his spirit was with us. And without any words spoken, it was saying, I'm connected with you, I'm happy, and I'm safe. And I want you to be happy and safe too. I was blown away and felt so blessed. Hey, John, I'll always keep your beautiful spirit in my heart. You are a righteous dude.
Ah. Beautiful.
That's beautiful.
Oh my God, it's a Torger line. Torger line. Let me just tell you, there's drinks up on the deck and food down below, and help yourself, and we're just getting started. So if anyone else wants to join in and share some memories, that would be wonderful.
So is Steve here yet?
He's still with Mom.
But he's coming?
Yes.
Well, as many of you know, Steve can get up here and talk for a long time. He can do all sorts of talking and sermonizing, and he's a great speaker. Well, I'm the brother that didn't get that gift. So you just got to put up with what I got. But one of the things that always impressed me about John was the quality of his friends. I just thought he always had. And all of you know other of his friends, and yeah, those are good people. And I've always felt that about him, and I've been maybe a little bit jealous, but I had him too then, because he had him, then I got him. So I was maybe jealous, but also blessed at the same time to have all these people on John's coat straps, that I got in touch with too, and I was really thankful for that. But I think there was one friend that John had that really stood out above all the others, and that's LaSalle. And especially, she's always been a great friend and stuff, but especially the last part of John's life. That LaSalle was just an angel and just took such good care of him. And it was very difficult and stuff, and I'm so thankful to have had John as my brother, and I'm so thankful that John had LaSalle in his life. And thank you.
Here, here.
You guys want to fill in the seats over here? Get something to drink? Settle in? I'm going to do this before I
where I can't talk. My name's Sue Futrell, and I'm one of the friends that Eric is talking about. I'm an old friend of John's from Iowa City days, and I also feel like I'm representing a few other folks from Iowa City who wish they were here. So no, it's really true what Eric said about John having the best friends, and I think meeting him when I was in my early 20s gave me a whole group of friends that are still, still close and dear to me. And I think it's okay with LaSalle if I say that John was the best ex-boyfriend a girl could ever have.
John had so many ex-girlfriends, but he was friends with all of them.
And he stayed friends with,
time.
yes, he stayed, so I wanted to say also how grateful I have been for that friendship. And John was an incredible gardener even back then. When I knew him, he was building furniture, and there were lots of days schlepping truckloads of furniture to haul to an art sale to sell. And a group of three of them, Russell Karkowski and Bob Singerman and John, who had a furniture company that met every morning in the Hamburg Inn coffee shop before work to kind of get the day going. And I learned so much from John's friendship, books and relationships and friendship and gardening and music and joy of life. And I also feel so grateful when he, I remember the first time I met LaSalle after you had met in Boston, and just feeling like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. This could not be better. So I'm also grateful for what good care you took of John. I saw him last about it a little over a year ago. He's lucky to have you. You were lucky to have him, and we're lucky to have all these friends that connect us. So thank you.
Nice shirt.
Featuring my two dear children that really didn't want me to wear this shirt, but thank you for letting me wear this one time. John Torgerson has been a constant in my life since I was 3 years old. He was part of a group of hippies in Iowa who embraced rustic rural living, psychology, civil rights, woodworking, living in freezing cold, unheated buildings, outbuildings, and other suspicious pastimes that were looked down upon by county residents.
Very, very euphemistic.
I would often stay at Uncle John's when my parents needed childcare. My mom is here, and to my delight, he took me to every Smokey and the Bandit movie that ever came out. We went to Taco John's in Iowa City for dinner, and I loved those outings with him. He was the fun uncle that let me stay up late and watch Saturday Night Live and eat candy and do all kinds of fun stuff. And he was tender too. I remember when I forgot my security blanket one time when I was sleeping over on his couch, and he went through the whole house trying to get the right cloth to match the consistency of the sleeping, the security blanket that I needed to go to sleep. And he was just a great caretaker too. At the radical psychology conferences that we all went to in Boone, Iowa with Marshall Rosenberg, John opted to work as a child care provider rather than engage with what seemed like a lot of arguments among the other adults that were there at the conference. And he didn't take himself too seriously. He talked to kids with the same respect that he talked to adults. He seemed to live in the moment in a really unique way. He didn't rush, and for me, he just met me where I was, and he didn't try to correct imperfections. He just talked to me from, as long as I can remember, as just an adult who is interesting, and he was just interested in all humans, I think, and just had a very curious part of his personality. And he was, present in a way that was very special. And in addition to his woodworking and social skills, I also remember his beautiful gardening skills too. He transformed the hog shed on our farm into this beautiful jungle of plants that was vibrant even in cold winters. It was very rugged living on the farm in the 1970s, and I remember he planted these lovely zinnia gardens where the lightning bugs danced at night. As I got older and moved to San Francisco to go to high school, when my mom and her partner moved out here, John and LaSalle landed close by in the East Bay, and it was such a treat to have them close by. I remember John and I drove from Oakland to Iowa City one time together, and we had our own theme song by the Rolling Stones, Start Me Up, that was a reference to his car reliably starting up every time on the trip. John would call me regularly and keep in touch regularly, which I'm really grateful for. I associate memories of him with the Rolling Stones and strong coffee and donuts. And he and LaSalle, I'm also grateful for them taking an interest in my two sons, and somehow connected with my teens in a way that, I remember you guys talking about how, I wish John and LaSalle were my aunt, uncle, or my parents. They're so cool. And it's that instant connection. It was really special. So I just remember a man whose memory is a testament to the power of being present and of unconditional love. He never rushed a conversation, and he made time for old connections. And in a world that moves too quickly, he taught an invaluable lesson of slowing down to really connect with people.
Excuse me. So I feel the need to add a little bit to Darsa here. John he had so many good friends in Iowa City and Iowa, but John often told me the story about when he was watching over Darsa one time, babysitting her, not baby, she was probably about 12 years old, I guess. And John was in the house, and she was outside with a couple of friends. And the friends were asking Darsa, well, what's this John guy like? Tell us about John. And she said, well, he's a cool guy, but he's not someone you want to meet in a dark alley. So there. So it covers a lot of space. A lot of special people in his life here.
Yes.
Sorry in advance, because it's all hitting me right now. For some reason, the amount of times I've seen LaSalle, I don't know why it's hitting me right now, but you were a good person to go after, because John and LaSalle helped raise me and Dee. And I just remember how much fun he always had with you guys, even when it was tough at home sometimes. And I remember even in my teenage years, he used to helping him in the yard back here, and just digging holes in the backyard. At 14, it was so much fun to just hang out with him, because he was just a good person to hang out with, and take that for granted as a teenager, because it doesn't occur to you it's just another person, but my uncle. But it was so much fun, and yeah, I'm gonna keep it brief because, but I just hope he knows how much I looked up to him. I love you guys, and how much I respect your guys' relationship, and seeing that, and how much you gave up to help take care of him. And I just love you guys very much.
Dick.
Well, it's wonderful to be here, needless to say. I think the closest Nancy and I had in exchange with John Lascelles was over 30-some years. We met in Calistoga every year. And that's part of where the theme of the Hawaiian shirts came from. One time, and there's a little used clothing store right on the main street of Calistoga. We were walking down, and John was scoping out the shirts, and we bought one. And so that evening, when we all got together around the pool, he was wearing this shirt, very proudly, and it was a nice shirt. But someone noticed, John, one part of your shirt is hanging down farther than the other part. And not to be picky, but what do you think, Oh, yeah, well, he agreed. So he started buttoning them, and he changed them all. And to his satisfaction, he thought, and then he said, well, John, the other part is hanging further than the other. And he said, well, that can't be. And then so he went at it again. Worked the buttons, and it took us a couple rounds to realize there was something wrong with the shirt. I really agree with Eric, I think, and everyone that knew John. He had a very special ability for friendship. And from my point of view, it was a really wonderful exchange, intellectual and professional. Being in construction, had such respect for you guys' work, and his attitude toward it was really terrific. And a lot of time. And one thing about his ability, his depth of his friendship was, we had Jay Seminoles, who was a very close friend of all of ours, was really fading with Parkinson's, and in the last months of his life, John was still, and I know John was not feeling all that great either, and he would drive across the bay and take Jay to lunch, help him around, and, just to see the depth of his commitment to his idea of what friendship was just terrific. It was exemplary. And I was really honored to him. I really loved it.
There's some photographic evidence of said shirt in the
Is that shirt over there?
the
uneven
pictures
button one?
of John trying
Yeah.
to figure out the shirt.
Is it over there?
It's up on the.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you're not going to tell us.
Oh no, it's not. It's not.
Yeah, okay.
I wouldn't give that.
Hi, I'm Melissa, Iowa and California, friend of John and Lascelles. And I'd like to read what Jessie Singerman wrote. She was a good friend of John's, and she
Another
couldn't.
old girlfriend.
You said it, I didn't. But I am aware that is very correct. Who loved him dearly, and you. But here's what Jessie writes. John and I first crossed paths as juniors in high school, working on the school newspaper. He was a sports editor, despite having little interest or knowledge about sports. Probably because he could string together a decent written paragraph and happened to be male. Still, we had a lot of fun piecing together pages with rubber cement, hanging out in the newspaper office, and pretending we knew what we were doing. That was back in 1964, and our friendship endured ever since. John had a truly remarkable gift for friendship. I have no doubt that he continued making new friends right up to the end of his life. People from all walks of life were drawn to him and loved being in his company. He listened deeply, offered genuine empathy, and had a wicked sense of humor, all while being unfailingly kind. As a friend, you could always count on him to lift your spirits or gently steer you in the right direction, and he never failed to make you laugh. One of the things I most admired about John was how well read he was. He devoured everything from Thomas Hobbes to Zap comics. And over his lifetime, he accumulated thousands of books. He owned so many that when he left Iowa, he couldn't take them all, leaving boxes and boxes behind in barns, large barns, and storage units, very large storage units. A few years ago, Jesse writes, some friends and I helped him clear out his last storage unit, and we were amazed not just by the sheer number of books, but by the astonishing range of subjects: poetry, philosophy, classic fiction, architecture, history, art, birds, gardening, plants, and more. I remember one of his Iowa City apartments where he'd run out of shelf space and stacked books along the back of the couch using a wall for support. If you sat down too hard, the whole pile would topple, so you quickly learned to be careful. There are countless stories about John, but one he loved to tell was the time he survived being hit in the head by a sledgehammer. He was living in Iowa City and working a construction job, digging a trench. John was down in the trench while another worker stood above, straddling the trench and swinging a sledgehammer. The man missed his target and struck John right in the face, apparently in the one spot in the skull where a blow like that is not fatal. An inch higher or lower, and the outcome would have been very different. As it was, John was stunned, but not even knocked out. He loved sharing this story as an example of a lucky escape, one of those moments completely beyond your control, and as a reminder to enjoy life while you can. And he truly did. I'm sorry I can't be there to hear more stories about John and celebrate his life with all of you. He was a very special person, and I miss him deeply. That's from Jesse. And here's a few things I have to say about John. John and I were friends for many decades. For a while, we lived on the same 10 acres in Solon, Iowa, where he and Russell Karkowski had their carpentry shop. And John did live in a real remodeled hog shed. And one of my memories of that hog shed is I lived in another house on this 10 acres, and John ran over one afternoon and said, "Come out here, you've got to see this." The hog shed had slanted windows on top of it. Do you know what I'm going to say, Sue? Really? He did this with you too?
No, I've heard it.
We have a picture of it.
So everybody who knows the hog shed, I guess, knows this story. of what the snakes were doing on the window. It was a tantric dance. Let's just put it that way. I've never seen anything like it before or since. And John was fascinated with that and wanted to share it. It was quite an event. John liked children. He was my daughter's babysitter for some years when we lived in Iowa. I remember John's generosity and his caring for Darsa then, and I greatly appreciated it. Being the one with the hurried conversations, John was a balance to that. Darsa was an important person in John and LaSalle's life, even after she grew up and had her own children, Joaquin and Anaya. For many years in Iowa, John, and afterwards, John and I shared postcards that all of you have probably seen. I don't know how many postcards I have of Iowa jackalopes. But John loved them, and so did I. And every time we stopped in some gas station in the Midwest, we would send the other person a jackalope card. The other thing about John in Iowa is we were both Sagittarians. Now, astrology was kind of a big thing back in the 60s and 70s. It's not the way, it's kind of like get out of here now. But it was a new thing back then. We were both Sagittarians, and we had an annual Sagittarian party. It's interesting hearing that. I also understand that about John, that he has this very deep, fierce Norwegian center underneath the happy, hilarious guy. And John was a particularly vociferous Sagittarian back in the day, to the point that there developed an anti-Sagittarian support society that made buttons for themselves.
I got my buttons.
And they showed up at our Sagittarian parties with their anti-Sagittarian support buttons. It was a little disturbing. In the last years, John seemed mystified by human nature and corruption. I shared that confusion, and we had many, many conversations where we struggled to get a grasp on how the world had changed since those happy, hippie farm days of the 1970s. John was an open-minded, kind man with a very, very green thumb, who was interested in other people and in gardens. I love John, and I miss him so much.
Mostly know John and LaSalle through Eamon's family, but at this point, there are decades of that knowing, and most of the time we've spent together has been with our friends Eamon and Beanie and Sarah and Mike, their parents, and I'm always happy if there's a gathering to know, oh, John and LaSalle are coming, this is great, and I've left so many of our gatherings just wanting more conversation with John, and I loved hearing the things that you all have said so far. John had so much political analysis and feminism, and was so knowledgeable and thoughtful, and it is. I can agree about maybe better not to be here for this chapter for some of my loved ones, as well. But I always felt inspired, and John, someone I always felt like I want more. And sometimes life just happens, and we're all busy, and we don't. I'd say I don't feel like I got to connect as much as I'd like to, but. I really enjoy hearing about the way people have characterized his presence, and that not being rushed, and it's just so every one of those sitting and having conversation, often with some bubbly, it just always left me wanting more, and I feel really, really lucky to have known John, and my wife Laura really loved John and LaSalle, and I know some of what, the story of caregiving. I lost Laura a few years ago, and I'm grief, and I'm just really want to honor what you've done and what you're living through and into, LaSalle, and life.
So welcome back, and I want to open the cornhole podium to anyone else who wants to say a few words, and then we'll finish with a blessing from John's brother Steve.
All right. You have to wear that hat though.
It's appropriate. So, hi to everybody I haven't met. I'm Drew, or Andy, doesn't matter. Torgerson, I'm the youngest of the clan. And I don't know how much any of you know, but John's mom and our dad did not get along for quite some time. So my exposure as a young child was very, very limited. There's a trip, you guys were in Mason City and Clear Lake, that I don't even remember. And then I remember trips in the late 60s when everybody was in Iowa City or could even take a train and come in. But it was once in a great while, these three wonderful brothers came into town, and we had a great time. And then kind of lost track of it a little bit again. His life got started going, and I ended up at a college in the core of Iowa called Luther College, nice, cute little college. And my friends and I would get probably too drunk to drive, and decide, hey, let's go to Iowa City. And I must have called John from some gas station because there were no cell phones back then. And not once did he not say, yeah, come on over. come on over. How many are with you? 3? Okay, yeah, come on over. I got room. I mean, we were all sleeping on the floor, but we had room. And it was so fun, and we just laugh all night. And I will always think of him that way. And then from that point on, we always had a good relationship. And I thought the world of John. I really did. So I'm so sorry. I will miss him. I love this garden when you guys got in this house and I first saw it. It's like, yeah, this is John. Still is. So that's it.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Stevie. I'm the youngest of the 2 girls that were talking earlier. And I didn't get the amazing Hawaii trip with just the 2 of them taking it. But later in life, I did actually make up for it by getting a wonderful San Francisco trip. I don't know if you remember this. This was, a while ago. A long time. And I was out here to go to summer camp. Flew out a couple days early and got to spend it with John LaSalle, and it would have been at the old house.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I met the guy who lived here before you guys, which was a friend, and Cliff was a great guy. I remember his car. Well, anyways, this is about John. And I did get, plenty of memories, but I really did enjoy that day where you guys took me to San Francisco. We went to that hotel restaurant that gives you like the big view and spins around. We didn't eat there, we just walked, saw it, and then a bunch of other cool places around the city to where, we'd come and visit every once in a while, but I think that was one of the most full days up until that point that I spent here in the Bay Area. It was just amazing. And I remember us actually going out to eat, and we were sitting out on a street, and a guy came walking down, walking a little funny, and just, not living in a city like this, I was like, oh, this is interesting. What's going on here? And I make eye contact with him, and he just starts walking straight towards me, and then he just breaks the awful truth that I'm not sitting with my mother and father. And they've been lying to me my whole life. This is not your mom. This is not your dad. And I was just like, oh wow, this guy knows everything. This isn't my mom. This isn't my dad. And I think John was a little embarrassed that I initiated the contact with this guy. So eventually, once the guy left, John explained to me, when someone's acting that way, maybe don't make eye contact. Don't invite them to the table to talk. I kind of learned that lesson. I still make mistakes. But besides that, it's been a lot of, memories. Like a lot of what you guys remember is conversations with John were always easy. They were always the best. They're super interesting. There was never a dull moment. He always had something to contribute no matter what you wanted to talk about. And even as a little kid, he was always someone who would talk to you as another adult, another human being. Never treated you as a little child with silly thoughts or anything. It was like always, yeah, okay, let's go where this is going. And he just meant a huge thing to me. I know to all of my siblings, and again, the twins. Really sorry they couldn't have been here, and I know that they just absolutely adore both of you guys. And I adore you too, but they love their time. And yeah, we miss John. And I learned a lot from him, gardening here with him, working with your hands. He's taught me a bunch throughout the years, even though he got a nail in it one time in Colorado in his hand. But he's still worked with him. Yeah. I'm gonna miss John.
I have to tell another story on Uncle John. So, many, many moons ago, we went to visit Uncle John and Uncle Eric in Boston. And Uncle John had one of the coolest places I have ever seen. And in my, I don't know, I must have been 12, 13, Dad could probably remember exactly what time, but it was one of the coolest places, and it was this big, you know, before they were trending now, but it was one of those like big loft, open warehouse spaces, apartments, and it had all of these different levels, and I feel like there was like a tree that he had like carved and put in. It was so cool, and like each level like didn't have rails or anything, and it was like this just super crazy space. And I was I don't think everybody spent the night there when we were there, but my cousin Jenny and I got to spend the night, and there was this, so this big warehousey spot and all these cool levels, and then you could get onto the roof of this building, and on the roof of this building was like, and this is a shocker I'm sure to everybody, some gorgeous plants. And what was even cooler than the gorgeous plants was there was a kiddie pool. And I think we like slept in the pool with the water, or maybe like on, I don't even remember, but there was a pool and we slept in it, and we were up there on the roof, and this was just like the coolest space I had ever seen. And I feel like John always had like the coolest spaces with all his funky art inside and the masks and everything. And it was such a cool space that when we moved to Hawaii, I got this room that you could go out the window onto this little roof. So I set up some plants out there, and I set up a little kiddie pool out there, and then the cops got called because we had this pool out there. And it just, you know, the reason we even got that crazy idea was visiting Uncle John's just magical space. And I think one of the things that just keeps striking me about Uncle John is over the years is that all the magical spaces he's created, and you sit here in the garden and you can just see all of the plants and the wonderful smelling jasmine over there, and just not only was he a wonderful person to spend time with and you could just talk about anything with, but he just created these magical spaces that you could enjoy and spend time with and fellowship with others. And that's just something that just, you can't be in this space and not see it.
Hello everyone, my name is Anaya. I'm Darsh's son, and the way I remember John was every one Thursday out of every month we would come here for probably the past year, and this would be like our amazing feast where I wouldn't eat for 5 hours before so I can pack in all the pizza and desserts that I could when I was here.
Multiple desserts.
Yeah. And it was just this amazing time because John was just like this great guy. He made me feel like a celebrity because he was just so interested in what everyone had to say, and he was just such a great guy. And I'm so glad that I had him in my life, and I have LaSalle in my life still.
Speaking of natural places, the chicken coop when I was in Solon was pretty special as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So Steve, I think you're up.
Let me give a little eulogy first, as John's little brother. You know, I like what Stephanie said. I think the idea of the creator of magical spaces is a good description of who John is. And you know, when I was in high school, when I was finishing up high school, I got in some trouble at the high school I was at, mostly for not attending. A lot of trouble. Okay, I got in a lot of trouble in the high school I was at, and John told my mother, he said, let him come here, and he became my guardian. And I was talking to Earl Fitz. If some of you were from Iowa, maybe you know Earl Fitz, who is John's really good friend. and I asked, I was talking to Earl Fitz this summer, and he said, yeah, these are a couple 22-year-old kids, and they go, we're the guardians? and the great thing about living with John was, in the creative and magical space, he told me, he said, I've got 2 rules for you. You go to work and you go to school. Well, it turned out that going to school actually changed my academics completely, because it makes a difference. You got to be there, and you got to show up. And going to work was good, but other than that, he pretty much let me do what I want, and I got to hang around with these cool college seniors for the whole half. And my friends would come over from Park Forest. They would all be welcome. We'd all be spreading out on the floor, and they get us a couple cases of beer, and we'd stay in and have a good time. But John, but in life, when I was ordained as a pastor, he came down to Tennessee to see my ordination. He always made, like you were saying, he made you feel like you were special. You were always his little brother. You were always special. We didn't spend a lot of time together after we grew up, but we spent a lot of time together. Obviously, we used to move from place to place as kids. And let me tell you, when you move in as a little kid, you've got some things to worry about. But not if you've got a 4-year-old brother named John. You could just slide in there like you've slid in any place else, because, I remember times when kids would start to pick on me or my friends, and they'd say, hey, that's John's brother. And they would leave us alone. They would, oh, okay, well, we're out of here then. But John always looked after us. He always had that sense that he was the big brother, and he was. He was the big brother, and he took care of us, looked after us, was concerned about us. And only recently did we, we've been in Guam and Hawaii and Korea and Alaska, and we've moved all over the place, so we've never really been close to John and LaSalle until my last assignment was at Travis Air Force Base, and so we were really close. And the only kids I had then were the twins, who really wish they were here, but my daughter, Skylar, graduates on Friday from Savannah College of Art and Design, and so she's finishing up her last week. But it was great fun because LaSalle and John would have Samantha and Skylar from, I think, 7 on. You would have these magical weekends, again, the magical space. We would get pictures of the masks that they all had on and the carrying on that they would do here, and they always wanted to come back. It was always exciting. In fact, both Sammy and Skylar have said, as soon as we get this done, we want to visit LaSalle. We want to spend some time with LaSalle because they're close, and I thought, well, if we would have been closer all the time, we would have spent more time together. But it was great these last several years. And of course, John and Eric built my cabin that I've got out in Colorado, where I live now, and well, I'll tell you, that was a chore. Adventure, okay. Adventure, especially when the tents collapse because of the snow. But in Colorado. Anyway, we will sorely miss John. We used to discuss probably every week or when we got together, John and I did not see eye to eye on several things. For example, he thought Trump was a bad guy, and I thought he was the Antichrist. So, so we didn't see eye to eye on things, but we always saw that we didn't necessarily see the same causes, but we always saw the end result the same way. We always could see, there was nothing that we disagreed with was bad or good. We were always agreed on what the end results were. And so I think of that as, I have a long time ago made a decision not to see life as maybe Shakespeare said it was, written by an idiot, full of sound and fury, with no meaning. I've always thought it, and I think John, I'm sure John did too. Again, we saw it as something that has meaning. And the older I get, and the older we get, as people, we've gone through a lot of sorrow, and this is just one more. It's like, geez, the blows just don't stop. I came down here from my wife having a catheter. She's been in the hospital the last couple of days for a heart attack. We're going, holy mackerel, what happens? You know, just a lot of things happen. And back when I started my ministry, actually quite a ways into it, I had to deal with my first death of a child. And it was when I walked away from that, you know, I knew the mother, we were friends, we did all these things together in the single parents group. This little 9-year-old girl who was kind of crippled all the time and had some real problems. She passed, and I mean, all the guys would carry her along. She was always in a wheelchair. Didn't make any difference. Wherever we went, she went with us. And we did, the guys, you know, always some big guys, some big single dads too, would just pick up the wheelchair and carry her wherever we went. This was in Alaska, so you know, you could, or in Hawaii, I should say. So we had some good walks, and when that happened, it was like, oh, that's too much sorrow. I can't deal with that. And then my very next assignment in the Air Force was Wilford Hall Medical Center, the biggest Air Force hospital, pediatric oncology. And that's where God answers my prayers, so be careful. But it was during that time that I realized sorrow has its effect when you think in the long term, and that is that I'll tell you one thing: when you really start to, you know, when you start to see these important things, these really important things go, you realize there are very, very few important things. There's hardly anything that's important. You know, my relationship to God, my relationship to my family, my relationship to my friends. And because I have a pretty good job, my relationship to my job, that's it. You know, everything else is just sort of peripheral to that. And I think that I learned that through sorrow. And the other thing that I learned through sorrow, and you know, as I try to take this impact of, again, losing a brother, is that, you know, Simon and Garfunkel sang this song, and some of you, most of us are all old enough to remember Simon and Garfunkel singing this song. But I am a rock, I am an island, and a rock feels no pain, and an island never cries. I have my books and my poetry to protect me. I touch no one, and no one touches me. I am a rock, I am an island. And they go on and they sing several verses, and it's like, if you just remove yourself from love, you know, and it says, you know, some talk of love, you know, and you know, I don't care anything for it, you know. Love just causes you to hurt, you know. Simon Garfunkel. You know, and there's another perspective, and that is, you know, that you can remove yourself, or you can just keep loving, despite what happens, despite getting knocked here and knocked there, because the more people you love, the more you hurt. You know, in terms, the more joy you get too, obviously, but when we lose, we get this sense of loss, and when I think of that, I am a rock, I am an island. You know, you think of like this hard acorn, you know, and you can kick an acorn around, and you can do all kinds of things to it, and if it keeps a hard shell on there, it'll be okay, you know. But as soon as that acorn decides to put a root down and a sprout up, it's really vulnerable. And that's the way love is. It makes you vulnerable. But only the acorn that sends the root down and the sprout up gets to be the giant oak. Gets to be a place where people rest and find shelter, where people picnic, and where people have, you know, get shade from the sun, get shade from a hot day. And you know, as I look at John Stratton, I certainly know with John, he was an oak, you know. We found comfort in his shade. I always found comfort, you know. I mean, no kidding. I can't tell you the times when I'm a little kid that all I have to do is be up next to John. I'm safe, you know. And then the reputation gets around. You're just safe, you know. You can go anywhere you want to go with all your friends, not worry about what happens in the neighborhood, because they aren't going to pick on you, you know. And when you're a new kid, it's important. John was always kind of a rock for us, and a tree, and somebody that we could count on. And so he will be sorely missed. But I really think that it's in loving and seeing John's love for me, and always his care. You know, we would argue, but there was never any animosity between. I don't think we haven't fought as kids since we were like 16 or something. You know, I mean, we just we all just got along as brothers, and
You guys wrestled once, but it was at my request.
well, Eric won
They
that
were
one.
wrestling over my Army helmet. I was 8.
Anyway, so I rest in the comfort that, and I believe John didn't think this was the end. You know, and I don't think it is. I can't see that we've got a universe that's infinite in size, with billions and billions of galaxies, that there isn't another world to come where we'll have learned the lessons of selfishness here, and we are getting a huge dump of what selfishness and lies do, and nobody will ever pick it up again. You know, it's like, nobody will ever want to lie. Nobody will ever want to do anything but serve each other. I'm just convinced of that. I'm convinced there's something coming next. And in that world, we'll have learned so much about what happens when you lie, what happens when you just serve yourself, that everybody will only wake up in the morning and say, what can I do to make everybody's life better? And not think about themselves. And there'll be a oneness. And John and I agreed about that. You know, he kind of took a Buddhist approach, but the oneness of us. And so it's with great hope. I say goodbye, but and you know, I know at 75 years old, there's not that many years left. And when I say goodbye, I also think, something more is going to happen. Now, of course, as a Christian pastor, I have a certain sense about it. John had another sense, but I do believe that we learn lessons from loving each other and caring each other. And John will always be held dear in my heart. You know, if you don't mind, let me just say a little prayer and just ask for what I believe God can do, and that is to bless us as a people and guide us in this world to be brave, courageous, and head to the end with some sort of vigor, despite what happens around us. So let's bow our heads. Father, Creator, we just want to thank you for John, for what he's meant to us as a friend, for what he's meant to us as an uncle, for what he's meant to us as a brother. We are grateful for him and for this magical place that he created right back here, and the magical place that he's created for us all his life, and that has now been created in our hearts for him. We do ask that we would see beyond the pale of this earth and the things that are certainly setting us back as a nation and as a world, and as we see a whirlwind happening around us that we can't do much about. We ask that you would give us a fire, give us a desire to be giant oaks, to stand firm, and to be there for each other. Amen.
Begin.
Yeah.
I'll drink that.
There we go. Yeah, some champagne.
Plenty more food and wine, and help yourself. And I'm just so glad you're here.
I didn't recognize you. Good to see you too. I know, because you were kid.
Eamon and Sarah and Michael, you've met over here. He's their son.
That's John.
I didn't.